Hi everyone, welcome to this session with Tim Runcie. He's one of the speakers. I knew him before he ever knew me. Tim, thank you very much for agreeing to do this session. And it's actually a very interesting topic. He's going to talk about successful use of Scrum and Agile with project and project server. I cannot tell how many times people ask me when we do consulting that and tell me that project cannot do Agile. So I'm hoping you will clarify that myth today.
We will.
So take it away, Tim.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here with me. In fact, I'll turn off my video here in a few minutes, but it's always nice to say hi and hello. Definitely want to make sure I walk you guys through some of the tips, tricks, and approaches, and I like being in the tool for presentation purposes. So as Prasanna said, we certainly run into many organizations that really struggle in trying to get a handle on Scrum and Agile type methodologies or processes, or maybe a blend between the two. So why don't we do this? Let me share my screen with everyone here. And there we go. And we can get started. Well, so welcome everyone. A little bit of my background. I've been doing this for a long time. And in fact, I remember back in 1989 when I was using this DOS product called Project. And little did I know that 20 plus years later, we would see an extensibility and integration with so many different processes where this little scheduling technology continues to deliver for demand management and resource planning. So as a project MVP and part of the scheduling community practice, I do a lot of presentations and speaking, and this is something that's been an evolving discussion. In fact, I remember in some of the different forums, we would have conversations and people were like, well, project just isn't agile. And I said, I beg to differ with you. So as I spent time writing books and teaching classes and mapping processes and doing quite a bit of the work, I really found that there was a need to continue this conversation. And so I'm very proud today to be able to work with you guys on the virtual conference. And certainly I'll be referencing some of the newer content that's coming out. So this has been a labor of love, and excited to be working with both the Microsoft product team as well as our community of practice to deliver good value around project and agile approaches. So let's quickly cover our agenda for today. I want to start, before I jump into the tool itself, I want to talk about methodologies. Sometimes it's really important to get the bounding boxes correct, and in terms of understanding Agile, Scrum, Waterfall, or a blend of the integration pieces. And then also to help set the story, which is, as this continues to evolve, we are going to see more and more investment that scheduling technology that Project has is going to offer. I'll highlight some of that today, but as you get in, we'll certainly be looking at both Project Online. We'll talk about Project Server. I'm going to demo as much as I can the time that they let me do it, and this should be a lot of fun. Again, building Scrum and Agile components. I'll show you how to put these pieces together. And I know there's a lot to digest, and if you've been going to some of these sessions, you certainly probably have a brain full of information. So at the end, you can certainly reach out to me for templates and additional conversation. In fact, they've got webinars going on every week where we're talking about these elements. So let's just step back for a moment. Let's talk about the solution spectrum around project, program, and portfolio management. Now, if you look in the diagram that's kind of showing up here, we look at the horizontal axis here. We talk about collaboration, meaning the ability for people to connect, talk, discuss, and see what's going on. And then we talk about defining the vertical axis as level of process. And some of you may have seen this diagram that's been out for a while, but I think I wanted to emphasize a couple pieces as we move through the spectrum of the project management solution. So in many cases, you'll see in basic project management, people are keeping notes. They've got goodness gracious, paper on their desk. They have flip charts. They have Post-it notes. For some of us in the day, remember the old cork boards and yarn and 3x5 cards. And so we look at basic project management, and from a technology stack, we think through Excel. You're going to hear things called Office 365 Planner or Wunderlist. Some people track tasks in SharePoint, and certainly in Outlook. And we know that this is what we refer to as the demand story. But as you begin to start to have interactivity and you want to start forecasting resources, work, deliverables, even leading into earned value, you see that there's a shift in moving into more of collaborative technologies. Moving up through Project Pro or Project Pro for Office 365, we talk about the synchronization of SharePoint, and something that I'll talk just a little bit about. In fact, I probably could spend at least a couple hours focusing on just the integration with tools like Visual Studio or Team Foundation Server, or maybe you'll hear other tools like Version 1 or Jira, where organizations are really working in maybe other types of demand and scheduling components around development work. But as we look at the story that comes together, the key is really understanding how do we pull this into a place where we can talk about how the project managers get what they need, and also we deliver the value that maybe the technical teams are working with. So certainly in the Agile Scrum world, or at least in the project management world, and a combination of both, you find that testers and the customers and project managers are all chasing after the person who's closest to the fire. And as I'm showcasing here, this poor, looks like a turkey, is really getting a whole lot of pressure from something that is going to come down pretty hard and fast. And so if everyone is hungry to know what was going on, how long does it take, what we want to do is begin to look at methodology applied to the technology. So you'll hear terms around standard project management structures, meaning that we might be hearing the term waterfall, or we might be referencing a PMBOK or PMI, phased approach, where we have initiation, planning, execution, control, closeout. For those of you in different parts of the world, you'll find different methodologies. In fact, Prince2 very commonly used: start, plan, initiate the project. We've got controlling stages, manage product delivery. IBM world, we certainly have seen the use of rational unified process. Sometimes you hear people refer to it as a RUP. But what I typically find as we work with organizations is they have all kinds of different standard structured approaches to managing their projects, including the last one here, referred to as GERD. GERD stands for Get Done. And in many cases, they are using a whole myriad of tools and technologies, and some of them might be a blended project as well. So as we think about the methodological approach, you hear the term Agile. And I think it's important to understand that Agile Methodologies, and that's a plural, is referring to what we call complex adaptive systems, meaning that they're approaches that deal with iteration. So if we deal with it in terms of extreme programming, meaning how we're actually doing the code writing. Many of you work with Scrum or have been involved in Scrum processes, and I hear organizations say, well, I'm going to go out and get my Scrum Master cert. It's only a day and a half to get Scrum Master certified. And I'm like, wow. If it only takes you a day and a half to be a Scrum Master, maybe there's a little bit more to it that you should be thinking about. And so how we organize projects, whether it's lean or Crystal or rapid application development or joint rapid application development, we really are talking about a process of interaction and iteration. And so as we begin thinking of Agile methodologies and whether Microsoft Project and where it fits, this is where it's important to begin to understand that as we look at that workload, or at least tracking what's getting done, we think in terms of, and I'm going to refer back to Agile for a good portion of this, and Scrum, is that we have these series of sprints, or there's a series of short bursts where people are working hard and trying to accomplish something within a defined period of time. Now, the picture here, at least in the PowerPoint, we talk a little bit about the cartoon. And if you've ever heard people throwing around terms saying, hey, listen, you know, that's great, but you're really a chicken and I'm not going to talk to you, or hey, listen, you're a pig, you better get involved. And you go, what did you call me? So in terms of phraseology, the cartoon here is perfect. There was a chicken and a pig who were friends. The chicken had a great idea. He said, hey, listen, pig, I was thinking we should open a restaurant. Pig says, I don't know, what would we call it? And they think for a few minutes, and the chicken says, how about ham and eggs? And of course the pig says, no thanks, I'd be committed, but you'd only be involved. And so this phraseology around Scrum, talking about chickens and pigs, and you hear backlogs and sprints, and sometimes we drill into epics and user stories. The whole idea is that there's a level of involvement between different resources on that. Now, Scrum, as a term and terms of an approach to doing work, has been used all over, whether it's commercial software development, in-house, external contract development. You'll see web signs, mobile projects. In fact, if you haven't heard today, the mobile story is getting stronger and stronger worldwide as there's over 1 billion devices out there. And so myself and my background coming both out of technology and even before that in construction is that you see this idea of this iteration. So if you haven't done this before, I recommend going out and just doing a quick search for something called Agile Manifesto. If you don't know a whole lot about that, or you hear your organization talking about this, it's important to understand this, where it's coming from and then how we're going to apply that to MS Project. So if you think in terms of the Agile Manifesto, which was kind of posted out on the internet in 2001, talks about individuals and interactions over process and tools. Getting to working software versus comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And so those in the project management world start cringing when they say no documentation or little documentation and contract negotiation. So the idea, of course, is that we have a series of agile, iteration, highly interactive, getting to value first. And in terms of responding to change over following just a set script, it really empowers relationships. And I think that's really important because as an educator and a speaker and a consultant, I really value the relationships that we develop over time. And so if we talk about agile benefits and begin to prepare ourselves for how does project deliver some of this, let's talk about some of the key pieces. So you'll see here where it says, you can get to a prototype quickly. You're focusing on the highest value first, meaning there's less distractions. We know what we're trying to get to. It's almost like eating your frosting. So as we begin to think about the importance of what we're working on and where we're spending our time and energy, this agile approach really gets into that continuous process or product improvement. And in fact, you've heard maybe the term semper fidelis or semper fi, meaning always faithful. Out of the organization that I came in, I used to work construction, and we called it semper gumby, which was always flexible. And so in many cases, in development or technical projects or even non-technical projects, we go through a process of iteration and interaction. And so if we think about Agile and the benefits lending, many organizations are really striving and enjoy doing that. In fact, if you talk to technical teams, they love working in a Scrum or an Agile process. And then you talk to program or portfolio managers or executives, and they hate it because they can never know when something's getting done. It's always this endless process improvement or this endless spin. And so somewhere between, hey, I love having fun and working with our customers and we get to gold plate it all the time, to, hey, listen, I've got to have exact forecasting capabilities there from a portfolio perspective, there's a balance between the two. And I think this is where we can show how project can help focus and deliver some of that value. So in terms of adaptive and real-time solutions, Agile provides a great platform for that. Now, those of you that have been around long enough, you've seen lots of methodologies come and go. In fact, you've even heard organizations saying, we're moving to Scrum, or we're going to move to a RAD application, or we're going to do some RUP process. And so it'll be another silver bullet where people get very excited and they jump onto the next shiny object and maybe haven't done their due diligence in making sure that it does work. So in this picture here, you can see two pilots turning around for a nice photo, big smile, and of course not really seeing that right in their main window is an oncoming plane. So the idea is that there are dangers to Agile. And so this is where, again, I'm going to come back to project and say, listen, if we think about project and people say, oh, it's not Agile, I beg to differ. However, in that Agile process, in many cases, you have different parts of that organization running around and they're reinventing the wheel. Or in some cases, people get so engaged in working and developing something, they lose sight of the prize. And that's where we really want to talk about the value of that portfolio of what are we doing, what are we trying to accomplish. And again, if I see many times organizations working in an Agile process, they have a loss of project, program, and portfolio visibility. Hey, the technical teams get together, they talk to the customer, they seem to have a lot of fun, but I'm not quite sure where we're going and how do I prioritize and is this going to get done? And so executives get very frustrated in terms of management processes around Agile. And the fact that there might be less documentation and we had 15 changes, or maybe there's a product over a process. And trust me, process mapping is very important, especially if you're in terms of dealing with SharePoint or workflow, or even if you're in Project Online or Project Server and you want to set up workflow, you really need to understand what that process is. So the idea that I get kind of frustrated with is that there's a lack of metrics. And I am huge about getting to metrics. I want to see ROI for our customers. I want to see results. I want to see culture change and tied back to not only methodology and process, but the technology that helps you get there. So there are dangers certainly in leveraging Agile. There's certainly great benefits. And let's talk about Microsoft Project and how that fits into the equation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up an Agile project schedule template. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, and I'd actually like to drill into the details. So let's just take a peek here. And in this case, I've got a project schedule, and you can see here I'm in 2013, but whether this is 16 or 10, or in some cases we even have customers that are limping along with some of the older versions, the concept of project being agile or not agile should not apply. In fact, I'm going to say this very clearly. Project is not an agile tool. It's not a waterfall tool. Project is a relational database. Now think about that for a moment. A relational database means that I can lay out information, I can track it, I have views, I can sort, I can filter, and I can group. Now, having a background in relational databases and designing lots of different technologies, I've seen many different types of tools spin up. And I guarantee you, if someone's out there using an agile product, guess what's behind the scenes? It's a relational database. And they've organized the information in views and grouping that allows them to see the information. Now, in this case, project is laid out in this environment that I've got here in a series of sprints. So we talk about sprints being a short period of time that we want to accomplish. In many cases, from 1 week to 4 weeks, we'll see a range of where it's a time box. And the importance of a sprint is to ensure that the work that's happening in that sprint is getting done and you're focused on producing value or producing results. So whether it's features or user stories or we're doing a bunch of testing and defect fixes, is that there's a series of activities, in many cases referred to demand. Now, in this environment, I've simply broken down my summary tasks and I've created a series of sprints. Very easy. I've linked my activities together, whether they are dynamic, meaning auto-scheduled, or whether they're manual. In fact, many cases we debate the merits of both dynamic and auto-schedule, meaning that, hey, listen, sometimes there are no dependencies. So if there aren't dependencies in the activities within this particular series of work, then do I have to make it dynamic or auto-scheduled? And the answer is no. In fact, in many cases, you can drag them, you can move them, you can split them around, you can assign people, and there's a lot of value in working with that. But I'm going to zoom in here. Hopefully you guys can see this a little bit better. But I want to talk about the key value components here. So we talk about the importance of customer need, right? So if the customer is driving this and we're focused on the highest value first, in many cases you may want to have a field that helps you prioritize. And from a prioritization, I'm not talking about using Microsoft Project's priority field, which is usually sometimes leveraged for auto leveling. It's really just saying I want to be able to have visualization so that if I need to move things from sprint to sprint, or if I need to sneak down here to the backlog and pull something back in, is that in this database, I can actually sort, filter, and group that information. Again, commonly, from a planning perspective, you'll hear in a best practice is that you estimate with a duration and you ask the level of effort and work. But in some cases, if you're doing work that's never been done before, it becomes very difficult to understand how to estimate. And sometimes technical teams really struggle with this. And so you're going to hear the term story points. And so here I've added a number field called story points, and it allows the team to sit down and kind of estimate the complexity factor. And I guarantee you, if you sit down with a technical team who maybe has never done something in terms of a type of interface or an application, or if they're going to try and build something, even maybe not even non-technical, they can tell you how complex it is, and they can give it some sort of a low, medium, or high, or give it a ranking system around story points. In fact, we even have customers here with AdvisorCon, the company I work with, that they actually use shoe sizes or t-shirt sizes. So they say small, medium, large, extra large. And so it helps people kind of get their arms and legs around what you can tackle within a sprint. And the idea is that as you begin to learn and doing your implementation, it isn't just tribal knowledge, but you can actually start forecasting the success based upon the complexity factor that you can work with. Now, you may or may not be tracking cost, but you might also want to talk about the state, whether something is done or not done. And I certainly know that if you're dealing with Department of Defense, in some cases healthcare, we get into what's called earned value, where you may get a credit or not a credit until something is completed. And so if it's in progress, you get 25 or 50% credit. If you are done, you get 100% credit. But then the idea is if you're not started or anything less than a certain amount, it's just no value. But it's important to know from a visualization is that this is a database. Project's a great tool. In fact, the 2010 and higher versions, especially if you look at 2016, you've got some great filter capabilities right in the tool. And of course, I've added a column for sprint that tells me if something is moving from one sprint to another. Now, why would I want to take a project schedule and kind of set up a few custom fields here? Well, remember, the idea is to allow you to get in, get out, and get back to work. And that's important in terms of how we manage our workload. For example, if we're starting in an agile project and we're starting to plan, in most cases we find that there's sections within the planning phase or the application development that maybe I'm tracking in a waterfall schedule that says, you know what, we got most of this in a waterfall planning exercise, but this whole app dev section, this here row 6 that I'm showing, this actually is going to go through a series of sprints. And the devil is in the details, meaning how much information do we want to put in there? Some project managers really don't care to track all the little micro nits, where maybe the product manager or the product owner might be saying, yo, I really do need to track a lot of these moving parts. And you're going to see Microsoft continuing this story, talking about things in Office 365 Planner. Some organizations use SharePoint lists or Excel spreadsheets to break out the moving parts. And whether you do or don't track all that data in project, it may be that you want to roll this information up and manage that. Now, in my view here, you'll notice that I'm in 2013, at least for this demo, and I can have the resource, I have my great BI reporting tab, and I have views, but I also can insert applications that allow me to connect to the cloud or share data, and as well as the ability to connect to, say, Team Foundation server. So if you have technical teams working, you can say, listen, I'm going to do high-level planning and project, but I'm going to push that activity right down into a development tool and let the development team break out the details. And you know what? Let them put it in there. I just want it to either roll back or have the actuals roll back and just keep my schedule up to date. I don't want to have to push and pull that information back and forth. So in terms of taking an agile schedule, let's go back to the other version here. What I love about this is that I can come in to a view and say, you know what? Let's just do a burn down right in my view here. And I can say, show me what's done, what's in progress, what's not started. I can group these by sprints, or I can group it by customer priority. And again, the idea is that if I want to jump in and just say, hey, let's just focus by sprint, and then I'd like to see the total work and cost and effort associated, either planned or actual, is that now you're making this tool not only be nimble and lithe, easy to work with, but you're able to certainly track and manage your work in an agile fashion. And so again, think of it this way. Project's not a waterfall tool. It's not an agile tool. It's a database. And how you set that up can make all the difference for you quickly getting in and managing those details. So again, from a grouping perspective, let's just go back and, we'll clear my group. Let's talk about how these things were built. So for those of you that are working in project or certainly are wrestling with managing schedules, and people say, well, I've got this technical team and they're going to do an agile or a scrum process. Well, there's nothing that says you can't do this yourself. So let's take a quick peek at some of the moving parts, and then I'll talk about the project online or the project server story, which means that you don't have to stop here in just a local file, is that you can extend this out into an enterprise environment, use that global resource pool, and still have the same capabilities. So I'm going to right click on my customer need here, and I'm going to go down to custom fields. And the idea is that if I have a field, whether it's a text field or a number field, is that I can take these and I can create lookup tables where I can come in and say, here's my customer need. And I can come in and set defaults. I can mark them low and high and medium. In fact, I can actually build a list of choices. I'm also in a position where I can come in and define even formulas or calculations. And what's exciting about this is that I'm just talking about filling out a lookup table and a custom field. In this case, I'm using a text value for that. If I go over to my story points, again, right click, custom fields, I'm just using a number field, right? And I can certainly rename these, which will be very important for us to know which ones are local, or perhaps if it's an enterprise field, we could reach up and pull those down if we need to. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I need to know, hey, I want to roll up these values. In fact, I like the idea of story points to give me an idea by sprint that if I'm coming in and collapsing and saying, okay, we've got our planning exercise, I think we've got our priorities mapped out, how we doing, and hours maybe all over the place, but I'm looking at that complexity factor going 27, 47, well, that's pretty heavy. Well, you know what? Maybe sprint 2 should shed some of the weight, and we can roll that down into sprint 4. And of course, our backlog is what we refer to as that parking lot, meaning activities that I may want to break apart, pull forward, or pull down. A common thing that happens, especially as you're dealing with agile iterations, and I'm just going to zoom this right here so you guys can see this. You can see right here that, hey, listen, if I'm working on feature 15 and it takes longer, what I don't want to do is continue to push it out. I want to break that off, and I might move that to the next sprint cycle, or maybe I'll pop that down to the backlog. And the idea is that if you can't accomplish work, we focus on what we can deliver, and then we move the work or the remaining work as a separate activity to the appropriate location. Now, again, be thinking about these tasks at either high level or detailed, depending on what you manage to, but the ability to connect or push this information out and say, look, take a feature and you break it into the 50 things that you need to do, and then just roll that value back to me through the connector with Team Foundation Server. Or if you start looking at some of the bigger story, is the idea of pulling and pushing data from different environments still allows you to do that demand management planning and that resource capacity planning in Project Online or Project Server, but not have to manage all the details and then put those details in a place where people are comfortable to work with. That may not be Project, maybe another tool. And so fun of this is that we've got the functionality here, including even if I sneak over to my state field, if I go over to custom fields, you can see here again, lookup table, text field, and I've come in and I've kind of put a series of values in here for me to draw from. Again, this is up to you and native to Project. You can do this in Project Standard without Project Professional. You've got that flexibility. The key, though, is looking at how you want to organize, sort, and filter that project. So the fun part of what we're working on right now really gives us the opportunity to look at some of these. And again, as I was showing you, coming up and either building a view where I can break it down into a burn down is nothing more than applying a group. In fact, in many cases, when I work in Project, I really like the opportunity to come in, manage my work, hop back in, jump out and print the data, right-click again, go back to my Agile table, see the information. Hey, I need to go over to my summary or tracking tables. And you can see here we're using tables to simply present the information to the end user. Again, the idea is to get into Project, get out of Project, and get back to work, and allow the tool to help you forecast and plan some of that information. So when it comes to building a group, let's just take a quick peek at that. Again, nothing but like rocket science, or at least making it look that way. But if I come into my groups and I sneak down here and say, let's just take a look at the burn down. Part of that burn down in Project is the ability to pick the field that I want to work with, whether that's local or it's an enterprise field, but I select the priority grouping. So I group first by state, then I group by field. And I wanted to make sure that I had a level of detail that I could at least visualize and manage to. Again, once I go into some of these, you're going to find that as you work with the values, is that you can tell it to a group assignments, not the tasks themselves. You can actually go in and change the color. So maybe I don't want to group in yellow. I'm thinking more of a lighter, softer view, and that blue is pretty bright. Let's just kind of tone that down a bit. And if I go ahead and save this and apply it, I can quickly see that it's an easy format to manage. And again, going back to that group, meaning that I can actually modify or manage these, you're going to find that you're in a position to actually take and detail these out in terms of what we call grouping intervals. And this is kind of important. If I click on Define Group Intervals, you notice that I don't have to group on every single value, meaning that if it was a number field, I don't have to group on every dollar or every numeric value, is that I could do it on a text field by prefix characters, or I could group it by each word. I can also, in fact, let me just cancel out of here, and let's take a look at our sprint grouping, where I simply group things numerically. And if I wanted to come back into that sprint grouping It said, since the sprint is based on numbers and I wanted to visualize this, I'm in a position also to come over here to that define group intervals and just say, hey, I want to break it down by prefix, characters, values, numbers. Again, whoops, I picked sprint. Sprint was a text field. Let's do it this way. Let's grab one with a number. Let's just stick one in there. So, hey, I'd like to put cost. And I'll just add the cost field here. And now when I come in and I talk about my grouping intervals, I'm going to find that I'm in a position, depending on as I set my group intervals, to look at an amount of value, starting at $100, going to the next 100. I can group by 10s, I can group by 20s. Again, the overall idea is that you can lump items together. And I'm going to group mine by 500. And I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to save it and apply it. And again, here I can see that even though I'm showing in sprints, I might want to be tracking the breakdown in cost. So again, project is a relational database. Use this tool exactly what it's designed for. Now with this story, as we begin clearing and managing some of the work and the work activities, it's important for us to understand that we certainly can set up your tables. Again, remember, you can build a table just like this, or a printing table, and you can also save it as a new table, meaning that you can drop in new fields that you want to manage and then give it a particular name. So the ability to get in and get out is helpful in terms of you forecasting and looking at some of that information. Now, of course, with what I've shown here, this shows it at least in a local file, but let's step back for a moment. Let's talk about project server options. So I'm going to bring up, let's just do this. I'll go ahead and bring in Office 365 or Project Server, depending on whether you're on premise or in the cloud. In this case, I'm going to work in the Office 365, but Project Online. And the value proposition, of course, is that you're able to roll up these projects into views. Well, again, thinking from a relational database perspective, I want to do the exact same thing. In fact, maybe what I'm looking for is the ability to take and test out an agile process and then build that into an enterprise environment. So let's look at a couple things before I go into the server settings and convert this into a mini project server admin class. Let's just take a look at what I would call the customer need. Let's just look at this for a moment. Now, because I'm an administrator, when I come in, I can take this field, and I don't know if you can see that right here, but I have the opportunity to actually directly promote this, and if it has a lookup table, directly to enterprise. Now, you can go and build these independently and create your lookup table and then go create your field and then connect the two. And normally that's a process that we go through, especially when we're in planning. But if you're in a hurry, if you're just in a light mode, it's not hard to build it, test it, make sure it works. You got the drop downs, you can build your views, and then click right here, add to enterprise. So before I add that, let's just show you the proof in the pudding. I've got the PWA settings field, and I'm going to click on our custom fields and lookup tables. So I come in here and I'm saying, hey, listen, I'm looking for that custom or customer priority field. Notice there's no lookup table, anything like that, nothing up my sleeve. And so now I'm going to sneak back over to my project schedule, and I'm going to say add the custom field, basically add this and its lookup table directly to project. So I'm just going to strip out the extra text field. I know it's local. I get to play around with a lot of these, but I'm just going to say customer need and customer need field, customer need, and I'm going to just click on OK. And it's going to run out, successfully add that to my project web app environment. And then I'm going to click on OK, of course. And if I go back into my enterprise environment, let's just take a peek here. Where'd you go? There it is. Let's refresh our view. And we can see now that as I'm connected, again, I'm in Office 365, but Project Server the same way, is that I can go in and I can showcase, hey, listen, there it is. There's my lookup table, promoted. And if I come up here, I can also see that I've actually modified and dropped in a customer need. Now, again, there's naming conventions and things you do and don't do, but let's just take a look. We took this directly out of our client and we moved it into an enterprise environment. So as I start building views, I can leverage some of the data and data information, make it available. Here it is at low, medium, high, critical. And then I can go back to my field, and we'll just leave this page since I'm not editing anything. And I can also come in and tell it to make it a default. So again, let's go to my customer need. And as I add new values, I can choose a lookup table. I can choose a value or choose a default value. And so maybe everything's going to be medium priority, at least when I drop it in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this. For existing projects, it's not going to put data in your project schedule, but for new work and new tasks, it's going to be always available, and it's going to be adding some of that information. So the idea is that the end user can manage that. Now let's look at this a couple other ways. Number one, if I've got a field already inside of my project environment here. So we talked about at least using what are called story points. And again, from a story point perspective, I've got a field already added. And you can see here it's a task entity level. It's numeric, and I just told it that if there's going to be a calculation or roll up, I just want you to sum. And I haven't added any graphical indicators, which in many cases we'll start looking at grouping or views that may help give you some sort of a visual picture. So I've got a story point field. And now if I go back to my client, and I was kind of tinkering around with a few of these here, and you notice that I had a local field here called state. Now, I'm not going to quickly shove that up into project. I'm going to build that manually and just give you kind of the taste of how quickly you can do this, especially if you work with either server or project online, is that I can come back and let's go ahead and we're going to talk about building a new lookup table. And in this case, I've got one called state, right? Here it is. Now, I pre-built this ahead of time so I can actually choose a list of choices. And you can see it says not started, in progress, or done. And the idea is that I can put in a value, I can have a prefix if I want to have indentation or outdenting. I certainly have that ability to add some of those choices from my drop-down menu. I find that very helpful in terms of making sure that we do leverage lookup tables. It helps to make your views and your grouping much more accurate. However, I don't have a state field, and that's what I need to create in terms of managing this. So let's just quickly make one, and I will go ahead and just call this state. It is going to be a task level entity, meaning I'd like to see this in the schedule, not necessarily at the file level. And it's text because I want to choose from a lookup table. And no, I don't want to go to team names. I'm going to go to state. And of course, I may even put in a default value here called it's not started. And so the value of us creating a field and saving this and being able to manage that with a little bit of education, you can go a long way. Now, of course, if I go into my project center and I'm saying, listen, I want to group all projects by portfolio or by owner, or I want to group it by department, it's a database, and we're presenting that information in a browser for our end users to work with. Well, if I come into a project, in fact, in this case, let me sneak down here to my example test project, which I probably will be going and purging when we're done here. But the idea is that I might have some sort of a waterfall schedule where I'm working with a series of tasks and activities, and maybe at a high level in the application development section, I've kind of listed some planning activities. What I would like to do is build a view that allows me to see the field so I can update those or update them directly. Now again, I can edit this both in project, where I can open and edit this directly in the browser. For right now, I'm just going to pop into project and I'm going to update this. So yep, let's pull that open. And because I'm connecting, here we go, Team Foundation server wants to know if I want to connect this, and I don't because I'm not ready to show that yet. But in this case, if you look here, I've got a series of tasks. Well, what I'd like to do is kind of borrow some of that information that I put somewhere else. So if I haven't built an Agile table, in this case I do, I may want to come in here and say, listen, just for this section, I may want to put that customer need. Well, which field is this? Is this the local saved one, or is this my customer need enterprise? And so the ability for us to look, link, and set the values of information that we have can be very quick and very efficient in terms of how we spread those apart. Again, story points, being able to move some of that information. And again, here's our state. Again, if I come in and I'm saying, listen, I'm in a local file, I want to pull from custom fields, I'm able to map and model task, resource, project, or even get back into my numbers. If it's my sprint or story point, again, you can select these and manage them. The overall idea is that whether you're starting your planning in Excel and you want to copy and paste, or if you want to update or validate some of that information, in many cases you can take your project schedule, grab a series of activities, and even just copy and paste these directly in. Now, I'm not going to make this a copy and paste story because I want to spend some time talking about the integration components, both current and the capabilities as well as future. But I'm hoping you're seeing from both the client or the enterprise is that we have the ability to have some of these views where we can bring the data together. The final piece, certainly from a project web app perspective, so we talk about going to the project center or project view, is you're going to want to build a view to showcase your fields. In many cases, if I sneak over here to my server settings and I come in and I say, listen, I want to manage my views, I can go ahead and take an existing view and quickly say, you know, that task, let's go down to task, let's take task detail. I've got that. Let's just copy this view. And what I'll do is, instead of trying to retype everything and move them all around, I'm just going to call this my _agile. I'll click on OK. And let's go and edit this view so we can have the fields that we need to showcase along with the data values that we want to work with. So task ID, maybe it's you're looking for, was it manual or auto scheduling, task start, finish, duration, and predecessors. But then again, I might want to come back over here and just say, well, I'm looking for task activities that have things that I need. So if I want to go back and say, listen, I'm talking about my custom fields. It might be an agile task that says, you know, I've got a whole waterfall schedule, but you know what? I want to have a yes, no field that allows me to see this and filter that particular view by what is agile or what is not. If I come back in and I'm saying, hey, listen, we're talking about getting into my customer story, and I may look for the importance of what is low or high. Of course, customer need would be important, and I might add that as well. I might even be getting into my story points where I'm thinking about, hey, listen, I need to add some of that, what sprint I'm in. And of course, continuing down alphabetically, story points. Let's go ahead and add those. And then I can move these around where I think that they need to go. So if I'm estimating story points and work at the same time, maybe I want to go through and validate some of these in terms of my grouping as well. So of course, adding your fields, coming down here and saying, hey, listen, I want to let's group it by sprint, and then possibly group it by customer need. As we begin filling out our values, just the same way we did in our project client, we're able to see this and, of course, make it accessible to the appropriate groups here. I'll just save this real quickly, and as I go through and populate data inside of my schedules, if I pick a project and begin to expand or collapse those details, I'm in a position to really come quickly and efficiently and manage and update data. We don't have to show all the tasks. We can just show the sprint. In fact, let's go in. I'm going to use Sarah Davis, and we'll go to example test project again. And as I hop in here, I might want to say, listen, I've got it open. I'm in a position, but you know, I don't see those agile columns, Tim. Where'd they go? So let me hit the drop down arrow. And as we go through and looking at my agile view here, I can now come in and see, hey, listen, you're grouping by, well, you got nothing in there. So here's what we're going to need to do is fill out some of those values. Is it agile? Yes or no? Can I come over to story points and begin filling these out? And of course, as we begin looking at that customer need, I'm in a position to manage that. So let me turn off in terms of the grouping here. I'll just go ahead and put no group, even though I had a group. And now I'm in a position where I can actually begin filling this information out. So instead of making this a data entry story and the ability to manage the view, it's important to understand that, again, think of project as a relational database. The idea is that you can put the information in, sort, group, and filter that, and build your views, whether they're local to your client or they're enterprise-wide, or you're going to be using some of the Power BI or some of the Excel services or even Visio services to link these. It's a database, and you have a great opportunity to manage that. Now I'm going to step back for a moment. I want to make sure I have a little time for QA, but let's go back for just a moment, and I want to talk about this connectivity around Agile with other solutions. So we talk about the better together story, and I think this is important not to just wrap up of saying client and just product online only, because the story continues to grow. And the idea is that there are pain points that project managers struggle with, right? They think, oh, I got to go find all the updates. What are the technical team doing? They give me estimates, but I really have a hard time penetrating what those are. And good luck getting actuals. Sometimes there's so many details, I just can't track and manage some of that. And of course, my executives want a roll-up, time phase story that tells them how they're at. but I'm not really necessarily able to get that from my technical or development teams. In some cases, executives definitely are looking for BI and reports, but again, explaining to them how an agile process or explaining the entire, rapid application development might be something hard to explain. So the idea is it may take heroic efforts to deliver results, and so the PMs sometimes struggle when they work with the technical teams. Inversely, it's not just the PMs who struggle, it's also the technical teams, right? Your dev team can say, you know what? I'm too busy doing work to track data in multiple systems. I don't have time to train non-developers in what we're doing. Maybe the project is a simple tool and I just need to track the information in one area, or I'm only putting in project is, it's just not agile. I don't have all the sprints and the epics and the user stories and the defects that I'm tracking. And so they might be using different tools. And of course, the work is extremely iterative, or in many cases dynamic. And so to always go back and add rows and columns into project might be seen by a technical team as difficult to manage. Well, this is where that better together story starts to play in a larger and larger role. And if you haven't in this Project 2015 virtual conference gone and listened to it, Sajan, our keynote speaker, was laying down the Office 365 roadmap. There's some great things coming. So the idea is that today you can connect these pieces together. You can allow the technical teams to work in the comfort of their environment while letting your project managers or program and portfolio managers use your enterprise project online, project server to pull or synchronize that data. And the idea is that actual TFS can go to basically roll into project, and you can push planning activities at a high level down to TFS where they can be broken apart. You get really the best of both worlds. So in the past, Microsoft created a little bit of basically a connective tool. They call it a connector. My company has created a connector for the cloud, and it allows you to work project online. But if you aren't aware, the story continues to get stronger. And so today you can connect these systems together, but you're also going to be seeing pretty soon here in the near term the ability just to go right to a task, right click on it, pull out your speed menu, go right down there and begin doing sprint planning directly from project, pushing that down to the appropriate places. Microsoft is recognizing the value of allowing people to manage demand, maybe in different places, but summarize and roll those together in the correct tool. So it's a very exciting near-term story that we are going to continue to see bringing value together. Now, a little bit word to the wise is the devil is in the details, meaning that, what needs to go up and what needs to go down is something you need to work out a process for. It's important to understand that these are databases, so you want to align columns. So if you're in Visual Studio and you want to track your story points or actual hours, or you need to synchronize your resources, there are elements that you need to align that need to be the same. And so in many cases, this is where we will define our custom fields, or you'll use some of the standard templates that are out there and help you manage and track these better. Again, the idea is to get the best of both worlds, and you're going to certainly see basically Office 365 Planner, which is an extremely lightweight tracking tool, to the scheduling and resource capacity planning of project, to the connectivity to not just project, but other third-party applications that are out there. Here's a little example of a schedule that we took, and we actually pushed the customer project and we did high-level planning, but we basically rolled all the data down into Visual Studio, allowed the technical teams to work there, and then just synchronize the actuals and then set a dashboard on it to tell us how we're doing with our estimates, how we're doing with our actuals, and begin to track and visualize that. So again, those are capabilities that you have in project today. If you weren't aware of it, it's pretty exciting. In fact, you got here a whole team tab that allows you to go and click and connect to TFS online. You can certainly connect it to TFS on premise. And again, if you're thinking about using project in the Office 365 environment or project online, there's a connector that we've built that allows you to bridge those two gaps together. And Microsoft will soon have an out-of-the-box story to help you guys work with. So, in summary, as I just kind of wrap up here, project is neither a waterfall tool nor it's an agile tool. It's a both tool, right? It really is designed to help you lay out your methodology and organize it in a relational database. Build the views, build the fields for sorting, filtering, grouping, whether you do it in project online or you do it on project server, or you do it locally. In fact, I showed you that you can connect these very quickly and easily together. You're going to find third-party systems and also the expanding universe of the Microsoft technologies that Microsoft has invested a lot in bringing a faster and more iterative and agile story. Yet project and certainly the project server environment or project online environment becomes your world for demand management and resource capacity planning. So the value of basically synchronizing those is still ongoing. Again, you have both for client and server good options to work with. So I'm going to open this up for questions. And I know people say, Tim, wow, which is so much information in a short period of time. So again, if you are interested in getting some of the templates that I showed today, I am happy to email those to you. Just send me a note. Some people ask for sometimes a trial or a demonstration. I encourage you to reach out. We're happy to help set some of that up for you. And then, believe it or not, every week we do a weekly webinar on project, Visio, SharePoint, the integration of project program and portfolio technologies together with methodologies, and it's a free PDU. So if you're not aware, let me know, and I'll just get you on the list, and you can attend. In fact, 52 weeks, 52 PDUs. And some of these, we're even putting them out on YouTube so you can digest them a little bit more at your leisure. So I look forward to maybe open this up for questions. And so let's take a look perhaps at what you guys have in terms of anything that I can help answer. There we go. All right. Got a question here. People were asking for, let me see if I can read it correctly, the opportunity to export to other systems. Does project let me do that quickly and
Yep.
efficiently? The answer is yes, it does. You certainly can export your data. Even copy and paste works well, but the idea is aligning your data between systems as a database. Prasanna, was there another question?
Yes. You showed a place where you were linking summary tasks together, and Andre
Oh.
was asking, isn't that a bad practice?
Oh, I love that question. Let's go back there. Actually, I skipped that in my notes here. So a good practice, or what I would call a better practice, is not to link your summary tasks. And there's a lot of great reasons for that. However, let's take a look at this Agile schedule. So why would Tim Runcie, Project MVP, actually be linking summary tasks to summary tasks? Let's just take a look at that. Isn't that sacrilege? And the answer is, think about this. If this is a sprint planning, the idea of when you link a summary task means that activities can never start sooner, right? Because remember, the summary task defines when all of its activities start. So if it's linked here, nothing in this group can move to the left. Well, in a perfect world, when we're doing project planning and certainly waterfall planning, we do have things that come back and move forward and backwards in time. But sprints are time boxed. That means you have 2 weeks from the beginning here to the end here to get this done. Nothing in here should be moving, basically back to another sprint. The idea is if it doesn't get done, you break it off and you move it down here. And so in this case, this is one of those areas, one of the few exceptions I would say, yes, if you want to link your sprints together and ensure that you have a clear time box, activities do not move forward or backwards outside of that 2-week window. And this is a way to make that happen. That was a wonderful question, an excellent set of eyes there. So good for you. That was a great question.
I agree.
Prasanna.
I thought so too. I have a question of my own then. So I don't know if this was fixed in 2013. There was a problem with approvals if there were links on summary tasks. Have you seen that in Project Online at all?
I have not seen problems, but so remember, we talk about getting approvals means, are we assigning resources to summary tasks? I don't recommend assigning resources ever to a summary task. I know that people will sometimes put budget at summary level, but we talk about getting approval or updates. If I'm talking, I think we're talking about task updates. Is that what you're referring to, or no?
Yes, I'm referring to task updates.
Yeah, I just don't encourage people to put people at a summary task level because, one, you just can't get your actuals in there. People can't timesheet against it. So I encourage not to do that. So honestly, I am not aware of anything that broke there because we just don't do it and we don't let our customers do that from a high level. Of course, project does let you do it. So I wouldn't be surprised. I just don't find that a very good practice.
Right, good. Okay, so Andrew liked your answer. He says it was very reasonable to use summary task links.
Okay, I'm back. I'm redeemed in good graces here.
Yeah. So he probably stopped listening at that point. So we are just kidding, Andre. Um, all right. So I think that's about it, Tim. I don't see any more questions, and it's also getting time for the next session. So with that, thank you very much for taking the time out to do the presentation. I
My
know.
pleasure. Anytime. And again, folks, do reach out. There's a lot of great trainings that are coming out, especially for 2016, and some good options. So, wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Prasanna, for all your hard work in making this available for everyone. Again, happy MS project managing, and think about project as an agile tool.
All right, great. And just so that people know, this presentation slide deck is available in PDF format in the under the session resources box. So you can download it for your reading pleasure. All right, thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening and day or morning.
All right, bye.